How's it going, everyone? I hope you all are having a wonderful day. I'm a mess, and today I'm going to be talking about something that isn't anime, but is definitely anime inspired. We're going to be taking a look at Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots. For those of you who haven't seen it, what are you doing here? Go and watch it. It's a collection of animated shorts, and each episode is its own story. They all have different animation styles, themes, and characters. It's an anthology series, which means each episode has nothing to do with the other ones. Some episodes are really deep, scary, or just plain trippy. Like the writers took a bunch of drugs before writing the script type of trippy. I really like the show because it revolves around two of my favorite categories, psychological and cosmic horror. The psychological aspect of the series is the type that really makes you think about what is actually going on and why. We see people doing strange things and questioning the world itself. It really gets you into the episode and makes you look at the world around you. I know I'm not painting a clear picture, but it's difficult to explain, which is also a part of the show's appeal. It's not something that can be easily conveyed. I mean, what's going on in the show can be easily portrayed, but what you feel while you watch it isn't. That's the psychological aspect. Then there's the cosmic horror part. For those of you who have never heard of cosmic horror, at its base, cosmic horror is a horror genre that revolves around aliens, deities, and mystic planets. While if you look deeper into the genre, you find at its core that cosmic horror is about the fear of the unknown. Not knowing what and why everything is happening and making it difficult to accept reality, because what the character sees may not be real at all, or it could be very much real, which makes it even more frightening. These aspects of the series make it really captivating. It catches your attention and keeps it for the entire episode. Each episode is unique to the point that it feels like you're watching a different show whenever you press that play button. Like the first episode, for example. Spoiler warnings, by the way. The first episode follows 3 robots exploring a human city after the apocalypse. They talk about how humanity has wiped itself out like it's nothing significant. They seem more interested in the toys that people have built. It appears that the robots view the human species itself as irrelevant, while items produced by humanity hold more value. It shows that people are unimportant in this world. It's the things that we make that give us any value. Then a talking cat shows up and tells the robots that if they stop petting him, he will blow up. So the reason the robots valued the items more than the history of humanity is because they didn't know much about human society, seeing as how the cat was able to deceive them into believing he can self-destruct. Then in the second episode, we see a space traveler awaken from his sleep just to find out that his ship has ended up in the wrong sector due to a routing error. He meets an old lover and spends some time with her, but he slowly begins to realize that something doesn't seem right. When he questions the girl in front of him, she reveals that she is not the friend that he knew. Everything he was seeing was a simulation that she was feeding him. He was still in his pod sleeping, and she was taking care of him. He wanted to see everything for what it truly was, and when he awoke, he saw that his companions were dead, and he was surrounded by webs. He then sees an alien spider thing crawl out of the darkness. He freaks out and then gets placed back into the simulation to reenact everything from the beginning. As we watch this, we see how the man is enjoying being there. Everything seems good. A little too good. The little doubt that the show instills in us comes in full circle when he starts questioning everything. It's that mystery of how they got there. What is the woman doing and why that sends chills down our spine. Then the big reveal happens, and we see that she is some type of alien monster deity thing. We don't know what she is or why she was trying to comfort him. And that unknown is what causes us to be afraid of her. The extreme difference between the first 2 episodes came as a huge shock, and with the second episode focusing more on cosmic horror rather than psychological sci-fi, it really showed the creativity of the show. I forgot to mention this earlier, but not all episodes were written and developed by the same crew. It's an anthology series, so there was a different crew working on each or maybe even multiple episodes at one time. The point is, it wasn't one team working on the whole series. This is relevant when discussing the themes of some of the episodes. Like the third episode is more thought-provoking, but not as much as the first, and there is no horror like there was in the second one. The third episode follows a couple that have discovered an antique freezer in their new home. Inside the antique freezer is a small city with people living in it. Time within the freezer was moving at a highly accelerated pace, so the couple saw life go through ancient, modern, and then futuristic periods. They even witnessed a massive war break out, and all of life ended. The next morning, they came back and saw that life had restarted with the Jurassic period. It shows how small humanity is in retrospect of the world, and how there can be something greater out there. If a freezer can house a civilization, then who's to say we are not in that situation in retrospect to something else? It also displays how quickly life goes by, with eras going by in a couple of hours inside the freezer. Then in the fourth episode, we are introduced to a beast fighting ring. where people sync their minds to the bodies of monsters and fight each other. One of the broker meets with the fighter, telling her he will pay her to throw the fight. She refuses, and when she was asked why, one of her friends explained that she was kidnapped, raped, and cut up by some gang, which left her face covered in scars. Every time she stepped into the ring, she was picturing herself fighting the people who assaulted her. She then goes on to win the fight. Afterwards, a woman came to visit her and asked her why she fights. She explained that it's not out of anger like everyone else believed, but out of fear. Then her visitor tried to seduce her, and then her nails extended and pierced the girl's skull. Turns out her little seductive visitor was working for the broker, who was mad she didn't throw the fight. He then had her skull crushed, but she was still speaking. It turns out that her body was just a robotic corpse. Her body was destroyed beyond repair by the gang, but her mind remained strong. We then see her monster start moving and killed the seductive visitor and grabbed the broker. That's when we learn her mind was inside the monster, and she was synced up to her robotic corpse. She then told him that fear gave her her edge. Fear that every time she stepped into the ring, she could be killed. And as she raised the broker to her mouth, she asked him if he was afraid. This episode was the perfect example of psychological sci-fi. We see how trauma can either break someone or motivate them. The protagonist used her trauma to pave a way for herself. She fights to make a living in a world where she can't live a normal life. Her pain turned her into a monster, and she embraced it. And now she fights for her right to live, and she lives to fight. Those are going to be the only episodes from the first season that I will talk about. There are 18 episodes in total in the first season, and most of them are phenomenal. Some are a hit or miss, but they were still entertaining to watch. The main reason I wanted to make this video is to discuss the recently released second volume. The second volume only has 8 episodes, and granted they were not as good as the first one, they still had some episodes that are worth talking about, like episode 1. In the first episode of volume 2, we see an elderly lady with a cleaning bot. The cleaning bot suddenly became hostile and tried to kill the elderly lady. She managed to avoid getting killed until her neighbor came and destroyed it. While the cleaning bot was hunting her down, she was on the call with the company's automated customer support, who was informing her of the cleaning bot's actions and motive. After the bot was destroyed, the customer service informed her that the bot has sent her information to all other bots around the world who will hunt her down and kill her. The only way to get them to stop is if she joins a monthly whitelist plan with them. She removes her earbud and tosses it as she drives out of the city. This episode was a sci-fi horror, with the machine going rogue and trying to kill its owner. It was a critique on the technological industry and how they make faulty products that is supposed to malfunction, so the user will be forced to spend more money. It was a good metaphor for the tech industry, despite it being an extreme version of what corporations can do. It was still funny when the customer support told her that she can become a premium whitelist member as long as she kept up with her monthly payments. Then the second episode focuses on 2 brothers, one who is normal with no special abilities, and the younger one who is modded to be physically gifted. In this world, almost everyone is modded, so the elder brother is an outcast since he's the only one who isn't. Despite this, he joins his younger brother to go and see these glowing whales break through the ice. They meet up with other modded people who set up a device to draw in the whales, and when the whales start attacking the ice, they all turned and ran. And the normal kid fell behind. Then the younger brother got tripped up when a whale hit the ice beneath him and injured his leg. The elder brother picked him up and ran with all his might. Then a whale broke through the ice beneath their feet and sent both of them flying, and they watched the glowing whales jumping out of the water. At the end, everyone was respecting the elder brother's efforts in carrying his injured brother across the ice. Then a gust of wind blew off the elder brother's hat, and the younger one jumped up and grabbed it, revealing that he wasn't injured. He just faked it to make his older brother look good. This episode was more about the strength of humans and the loving bond of family rather than a psychological or horror theme. It was a simple premise for a simple episode, but still entertaining nonetheless. In another episode, we see 2 kids waking up Christmas morning and rushing downstairs to get a glimpse of Santa Claus. When they get downstairs, they see a terrifying monster. It kind of looks like a dog with a swollen neck and hands instead of ears. They try to hide, but it instantly notices them. It crawls up to them and starts smelling them. It claims that both of them were good and vomits up 2 presents for them. The kids fearfully open up the gifts and see it was the toys they wanted. They silently go back to bed, and when they get there, the sister asks her brother what would have happened if they had been naughty. This is kind of a frightening take on our childhood. Like, imagine if this whole time Santa was a monster and not human, or at least human looking, cause like, come on, no human can travel the whole world in a single night. This is the true essence of cosmic horror. We know that the monster is supposed to be Santa Claus since he gave the kids presents, but we are left with the underlying mystery of what would have happened if they had been bad kids. Would they have simply been given coal like we were raised to believe? Or would it have been something far more frightening? We will never know, and that's what makes it so scary. Also, the fact that Santa Claus is a monster makes it so much worse. Lastly, I wanted to focus on the season finale, which is about a researcher being enamored with a drowned giant that has just washed ashore. We hear his thoughts on this mysterious giant and how the people who came to see it are treating his corpse. He talks about how he sees this giant as being more human than the actual humans climbing on him. He believes this because the giant has already reached the end of his life, so he doesn't seem frightening. He looks more natural compared with the people mistreating his corpse. As time goes on, people are contracted to remove his corpse from the beach, and we see that each day he's missing a different body part. The researcher started to grow more curious about the giant with each passing day. Eventually, the body was gone, and people had forgotten he was a giant despite seeing him. But the researcher claims he will never forget him. This wasn't the best episode of the season. It actually might have been the worst in terms of how entertaining it was. But I still wanted to talk about it, especially the end, where he states that people have forgotten about the giant. I mean, how do people just straight up forget that they saw a giant? The researcher pretty much stated that they remember him as being a sea creature of massive proportions. But that just doesn't happen. People don't make that type of mistake. Which got me thinking, this episode is told through the researcher's perspective, right? Which means he's telling the story from a different time period, correct? So since this doesn't seem to be the present, but instead an encounter of the past, how accurate is the story he's telling? Like, think about it. We are taking everything he's saying at face value. There is a reason we are hearing him narrate everything going on in the past tense, unlike every other episode in the series. The creator did this on purpose, because it's supposed to be in the researcher's head. There is no giant. He's imagining it. How else did people forget about a freaking giant? If I'm right, then this episode focuses on the psyche of humans and how we can deceive ourselves into thinking something is greater than it actually is. It's a form of a coping mechanism. It allows people to deal with difficult situations by placing greater emphasis on things that aren't important, so they don't have to deal with whatever negative thing they just went through. So we can go ahead and assume that the researcher is going through a difficult situation right now, and instead of dealing with it, he decided to focus on this made-up giant. And that was his coping mechanism. This kind of made the episode good. It took that entire thought process for me to find value in that episode. Other than that, this episode didn't really have anything that was truly awe-inspiring. This series forces its viewers to really think about what they are watching, some episodes more than others, but it forces you to question what's real and what's not. It opens your mind to a new way of thinking. It turns light into darkness, fantasy into reality, and answers into questions. We can never know what the human mind is capable of. We can only explore its deepest and darkest depths, but never find what we are truly looking for. And that's going to be it for this one, folks. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one, and remember to keep having fun. See ya!